authorized the emergency manager for the City of Detroit to seek federal bankruptcy protection. This was a difficult and painful decision, but I believe there were no other viable options. Why did I do this? What's the rationale and what's the impact for both the City of Detroit and the state of Michigan? Well, let me start with the fact that this is a situation that's been 60 years in the making in terms of the decline of Detroit. From a financial point of view, let me be blunt. Detroit's broke.
One of the things that I want to say to our citizens is that as tough as this is, I really didn't want to go in this direction, but now that we are here, we have to make the best of it.
I mean, it's been about 50 years in the making, going all the way back to, a lot of people look at the 1967 riots and think, that's where everything started to go wrong. But the seeds of what's happening today go all the way back to the 1950s, really, when, there was a steady flow of capital out of the city and then a steady flow of population. And a lot of this had to do with race, of course. Detroit was a predominantly black city surrounded by predominantly white suburbs, and so there was definitely a long simmering tension between the two areas, and as a region it never really coalesced over the years, and that's taken us up to the present moment. Of course, along the way there's also been political corruption and the general decline of U.S. manufacturing, and then the final death blow came with this recent financial crisis where you had the foreclosure crisis hitting cities like Detroit especially hard, decimating the tax base and just really kind of delivering a death blow to a city like Detroit that didn't have the same sort of structure that other cities had to fall back on. Since March, Detroiters have been living under this emergency manager, Kevin Orr, who Rick Snyder, a Republican governor, appointed.
How does that work? Explain how a bankruptcy lawyer becomes ultimately the major decider, the one decider in Detroit.
The benevolent dictator. There's a Michigan law that allowed the governor, if a municipality was approaching financial insolvency, the governor could appoint a so-called emergency manager, and the idea was to do everything possible to prevent that municipality from going into bankruptcy. Last November, Michigan voters in a ballot referendum voted to overturn that law, and then a few weeks later, Rick Snyder and the lame duck Republican legislature passed basically a new version of the same law. And I think, everyone agrees that Snyder saw the writing on the wall. He saw Detroit moving towards bankruptcy, and he wanted to have some sort of control of the wheel when the city drove off the cliff. So he appointed this guy, Kevin Orr, in March. Mayor Bing and the city council have really had no power since then. I mean, having him be up there speaking is kind of comical because he's had no say. So
a city which is well over 80% African American does not have democratically elected leadership.
Exactly. They have leadership appointed by a white Republican governor who definitely did not get the majority of votes in Detroit.
On Friday, Detroit emergency manager Kevin Orr, as you just mentioned, said releasing the city from its obligations to public employees will help free up money to improve city services.
We're going to try to do this in a fair way. In addition, in freeing up the cash flow, it allows us to focus on the key issue that the governor has reiterated again and again, the health, safety, and welfare of 700,000 citizens in the city of Detroit. Yes, there are 9,700 employees, and there are 19,700, 20,000 retirees, but there are 700 citizens who don't deserve a 55-minute response time, who don't deserve endemic blight and crime, who don't deserve no hope and future and just continued debt over debt and borrowing. So we have to do this in some fashion, and bankruptcy will allow us to achieve that in some way.
That's the Detroit emergency manager, Kevin Orr. Mark Bonelli, why is there no talk of a federal bailout? I mean, the minute you hear about corporations and banks having trouble and going bankrupt, you have this discussion and ultimately a fact, the bailout of these corporations and banks. What about the city?
It's kind of astounding. I mean, the Free Press reported earlier this week that Orr was apparently talking to Valerie Jarrett, one of the top Obama aides, about this and got no traction. And especially in a place like Detroit, when you think about you think about the last campaign and how the president ran on saving the auto industry, right? Which of course was meant saving huge corporations, but that was Chrysler and General Motors going into managed bankruptcy, the same sort of bankruptcy that Detroit is about to enter now. The big difference is they were given $82 billion of federal stimulus money, and that's kind of a standard thing when a corporation goes into a managed bankruptcy. You clear the old debt, but then you need some new capital to move forward. When it comes to a city, though, not a corporation, there's no talk.